Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 131 of Chalk Talk. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter and YouTube at Shane Haff NFL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've heard him on the Tough Cover radio show. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _ Mark, we get to connect this week. I had to fly solo last week. The ratings were bad. The people were saying, bring Mark back. And so we give the people what they want. How are you doing today, buddy?
I mean, I couldn't be doing any better on a Victory Tuesday here. Wow. That was, we're going to talk about it, but I always say it feels a lot better to come on here after a big Eagles win than a loss, obviously. So, especially in a big game like that, I am very excited to be here talking football. I've been bathing in the NFL national media circuit today, just listening and watching every single piece of, NFL content that I can. And I always say the day after a big win, when you get to just do all that instead of avoiding it after a loss, it's awesome.
Yeah. We are doing this podcast live. Normally this goes live on Tuesday nights, around 9:30 Eastern time, whenever Mark and I finish recording the BGN draft show. But last night I knew I was going to be up late. I was up till almost 1:30 with wrapping post game, getting all my YouTube shorts and stuff up. So I asked Mark, hey, is there any way we can do this in the afternoon so I don't have to pull another late night getting this one edited? So that's why we're coming to you live now. This is not a new time. We'll be in our normal time slot usually, but a little change up this week. Also, we are coming out of the bye this week and have some new things to unveil. For one, I've got my new computer, so hopefully we will have no more crashing during the show. Although I did build this one myself, so we'll see if it holds together. So hopefully no crashing here. Also, we are unveiling a new segment on Chalk Talk. We enjoy the little sidebar tangent conversations we get into. I think you guys do as well. Sometimes it gets hard to get to those and still keep the podcast in like that hour and 15-minute window that we shoot for. So we are unveiling a new thing called the 1-minute drill. Each week, both Mark and I have a flag we can throw on any game that we want to, except the Eagles game. And it forces the other person to spend 1 minute, exactly 1 minute, talking about the game, and then we move on. And we will have a countdown on the screen. So if there's a game that I just don't want to talk about, I can throw my flag on Mark. If there's a game that he doesn't want to talk about, he can do the same on me. Limit one per host per week. And to kick it off, we're actually going to kick off the podcast with the Thursday night show with a 1-minute drill. It's been so long since Thursday night's played. By the time we get to Tuesday, it's kind of old news. So we will split this one in half. We are each going to have 30 seconds to talk about the Thursday night football game, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of the schedule. So for our inaugural 1-minute drill, Mark, are you ready here?
Let's go.
All right, I'll take the first 30 seconds as kind of our normal routine. You take the last 30, and then we will go from there. So without further ado, here we go.
T-1 minute.
The Cincinnati Bengals travel to Baltimore on Thursday Night Football on the short week. The NFL needs to abolish Thursday Night Football because we get injury-riddled games like this one. Joe Burrow out for the year with a wrist injury, so the Bengals season is over. The Ravens lose Mark Andrews, who is out for the season. I'm not going to say their season's over. However, I am walking back my take that they're going to be the AFC representative in the Super Bowl. They really need OBJ to step up down the stretch.
He's been playing better as of late, so he definitely had his best game in a long time this week. So I think he will step up, but I think that they needed him to step up with Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is such a huge part of that. Lamar even said it's his wide receiver one. It's his guy. I don't think it knocks them out of contention, but it puts them on the Miami-Jacksonville level instead of being on the Kansas City level. I think Kansas City is the clear number one contender in the AFC because of that injury.
0.
There you have it. Man, it is satisfying to get done right as we hit zeros. I'm not going to lie about that. That worked out perfectly. So we're going to start doing that for Thursday night games. Maybe unless it's like just a really, really, really good Thursday night game, because by the time we get to you guys, it is a little bit of old news there. So awesome. We will move on now to the Eagles game. Let's get into the Eagles victory on Monday Night Football over the Kansas City Chiefs. And then, as we always do after that, we're going to walk through every game on the Sunday slate, give you guys all the information that you need to know. So the Philadelphia Eagles travel to Kansas City and they beat the Chiefs 21-17 in what was just a painful game if you're a fan of good offense. I don't know, Mark, in this game, was this more really good defense or really bad offense? Like, first of all, how do you parse this game out? Good defense, bad offense, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, a little bit of weather. I think ultimately the way that I want to just boil it down is I don't think the Eagles played particularly well. I don't think, they ran the ball pretty well. So I'll give them credit in that department. I think Jalen probably could have been used more on the ground, and I would have liked to see that in a game like that. But through the air, really low passing numbers, obviously not what you want to see from Jalen, even though after this game, he is the front runner in the MVP odds right now on DraftKings, no free ads. But Jalen, definitely not his best game. The defense, obviously there's times, and there was a couple drops that we'll talk about, and they really lapsed in coverage at times. And third down, Mahomes picked us apart, especially in the first half. And the most concerning part about this game, if you want to talk about a negative takeaway, is how Kansas City was able to run the ball, especially in the first half, on what I thought was the best run defense in football. So that was the most shocking part of the first half. And I thought the game was over when it was 17-7. But for us to say that I don't think we played particularly well in any facet of the game, pass offense, run offense, pass defense, run offense, special teams, I thought there were times we got outcoached massively. I thought that there were times where play calling was an issue on the offensive side of the ball. To say all of that, and to say that they went into Kansas City and beat Kansas City in the first time that we've been an underdog in, I believe, the last 2 seasons, is pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible to say. When they interviewed Jalen in the post game, my first thought was, is it a pretty weak game for Jalen to get the post game interview? But then I'm sitting there and thinking about it, and I'm like, who should get it? Who's the standout star from the game? And the point of it is there isn't really one. This team is just resilient, and they find ways to win, and they figure out a way, however the game's going, whether it's a high-scoring type of shootout with Washington, or whether it's this type of game where each time you're in the red zone, converting to a touchdown is so important in a game like this. And each time we got the ball going, we moved the ball. Obviously, the yardage numbers, I don't even know what they finished. I'm not looking at the stats right in front of me. I think it's like 235. They had something like 235 total yards. They got outgained by more than 100 yards. But all of those yards were gained on 3 drives, basically, that led to touchdowns. And that's what matters. They got down the field. They scored when it mattered. And, it's truly astonishing that Jalen Hurts is 26-2 in his last 28 games. And that Nick Sirianni, I believe now, I forget the exact number. I think it's 26-5 in his last 31 games, which is the best 31 game stretch of any Eagles coach in franchise history. But people want to talk about style points. People want to really parse out, does it matter that it didn't look good? Do these negative takeaways matter? To me, you can never, ever, ever be negative about beating Patrick Mahomes, especially when it's in Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, you come down to the little things in a game like this. The little things like Andy Reid using all of his timeouts in the first half. And then when the Eagles horribly execute a 2-minute situation and punt the ball back, you have the ball at the 46-yard line with 44 seconds, but you have no timeouts. And so you have to kick a field goal. You can't go try to score a touchdown in that situation. You think about when the Chiefs are ahead 17-14 with 9 minutes left, and Andy Reid electing to punt the ball on 4th and 4 from the 39-yard line that goes into the end zone. It's a net 19-yard punt. Like, those little decisions stack up. And that's something I talked about on Twitter leading into the game. Like I post a graphic every week about positional edges, who I think has the edge between each team. And for one, like I put the bar like halfway on the Chiefs side for quarterback, and people were after me about like that being too big, and Jalen Hurts is playing so well. I'm like, I'm just here to tell you, like, I think Jalen Hurts is the second best quarterback in the NFL, but the
Same.
gap between him and Patrick Mahomes is about the same as the gap between him and Kenny Pickett. Like, and that's not a shot. That's not a shot at Jalen Hurts, but just watch Patrick Mahomes. The Eagles pressured Patrick Mahomes on 32 of his 50 dropbacks, and he took 1 sack and 1 intentional grounding that should be recorded as a sack. But like the wizard-like level with which he navigates the pocket, that back foot ball he threw 17 yards on a rope to the sideline fade route with Reed Blankenship coming untouched at him. Like, those are things, and it's not a shot at Jalen to say those are things Jalen can't do. Those are things that no quarterback that's ever played the football game can do. And he's so good. And yet, as you're watching the game, I'm just thinking the Chiefs are not putting the Eagles away. They're letting them hang in, and the Eagles are so resilient. Like you said, Hurts has now won 7 straight games when trailing by double digits. No other quarterback has ever done that more than 4 times in a row. I started talking about Reed and the timeout usage and things like that, and that's such a big thing. Like, people ask about coaching, who has the coaching edge? And I would say the Chiefs have the coaching edge across the board in terms of offensive game plan design. The way they run their defense. Steve Spagnuolo is such a good defensive coordinator, but the one place that the Eagles have a massive edge is they are lapping the field with how they manage 4th downs. And it played out in this game, and it cost the Chiefs this game. And that's overly like condensing it. That's overly simplifying it. But that's what it comes down to. Playing cowardly versus playing to go win a game. And I can't understand why Andy Reid, who's one of the best offensive coaches in the league, with the best quarterback that's ever played, is so hesitant to pull the trigger. And really all these offensive coaches, Sean McVay is the same way. Kyle Shanahan's gotten better about it, but he's well known for that too. It just baffles me.
Yeah, I would say, even though I agree with you, the most frustrating part of this game for me as an Eagles fan was 3rd and 1. And we line up in shotgun. What are you doing? We have a play that works 100% of the time, as we saw multiple times the rest of the game. I think they ran it 3 times last night, but they ran it, I think they ran it 3 times after that. We hadn't seen it yet at that point. If we're in a 1-yard situation, I don't care if it's 2nd and 1. They should be running a tush push to make sure you don't push yourself out of the range to go for it on 4th down. And I think Nick Sirianni might have learned that, at that moment. So I hope that that's something going forward that doesn't happen. But besides that, they managed 4th down well. And I was shocked when Kansas City punted from the 39. And that was dumbfounding, a dumbfounding decision. But obviously, I think we've went a while without mentioning a couple kind of key moments from the game. And, Kansas City fans and people who want to discredit the Eagles are going to bring up the Travis Kelce fumble, and they're going to bring up the MVS drop in the end zone, obviously. But the Travis Kelce fumble, to me, that's just a great play. Like that's a peanut punch. Shout out to Peanut Tillman, but that's a great play. And Travis Kelce probably it's less susceptible to that than most players. Like he gets the ball all the time and doesn't fumble ever. So that happening shows how good of a play that was. It's not like that was Justin Watson or something like that. And then on the other end of things, the MVS drop, that, I would be lying. I would be straight up lying if I said that there wasn't a moment where when that ball was in the air and I saw how open he was, that I was hoping that he didn't go down on the 1.
Yes.
I can honestly say I saw how open he was, and I was like, oh, well, at this point, please just score. Like, don't go down on the one. Do not do the Super Bowl thing where they can just sit on it right on the goal line for another minute and we can't win the game because they milk the clock. I was hoping for a touchdown at that point so we'd have a chance to go tie it up or go win the game with 2 minutes left, however much the amount of time was. For him to drop that, man, it does put the Chiefs wide receiver kind of problem on the forefront, but I can't believe I'm spending time on this breakdown to calm people down on Kansas City. But Kansas City, when you give Patrick Mahomes the amount of money that he has to make, and by the way, he's worth double the amount of money that he's making. So people, when I put this take out there on Twitter, people were like, "Oh, well, he should have taken a pay cut," and it's like he kind of did. He kind of did, and honestly, whatever he would be paid is not as important as the fact that in every year of his career, he has taken the Chiefs to the AFC Championship game. And in 3 of the 5 years, he's taken them to the Super Bowl. That's worth like $100 million. That's worth more than half the cap, to be quite honest. But no matter what the elite quarterback is, when you pay an elite quarterback to that level, you have to make sacrifices at some spot, whether that be on the offensive line, whether that be the weapons group, whether that be defensive line, linebacker, or secondary. You have to kind of make those organizational choices. The Eagles have made the organizational choice. They don't really care about safety. They don't really care about linebacker. They don't really care about running back. They care about those other positions. And Kansas City had to look in the mirror and say, what's the best path forward with Patrick Mahomes? And I still think the right bet was to spend the amount of draft capital and free agency capital that they have on the offensive line and on the defense. Because to me, I think they're still the best. I think if I was, gun to my head, I had to pick a team to win the Super Bowl right now, it's still the Chiefs. It's still the team that has Patrick Mahomes in a top 3 defense. It's that simple. I think that the rest of it can get figured out. The running game was really impressive last night. Travis Kelce's going to have better games. Rashee Rice I thought he was open more than he even got the ball in that game. But outside of that, they have nobody. I still think they're going to make the Super Bowl, and I still think they have a really good chance to win it. And I think, we're going to look back on this receiver conversation we're having and said, oh, well, Baltimore's got these problems, and Miami's got these problems, and Jacksonville's got these problems. Like, Kansas City has less problems than those teams do, even though the wide receiver one is so glaring, and it does stare us in the face, and it does stand out in big moments.
Did you see what happened when Mahomes was walking off the field? Okay, so no. I tweeted this last night, and then I woke up and it blew up. It had like 650,000 views. But As Mahomes is walking off the field, I'll just play this little clip for you. I caught this live and tweeted it out. He's walking off the field, tosses his glove to a fan who drops it. And it was just so emblematic. Like, I tweeted that out, and I said that Mahomes can't even get a fan to catch his glove after the game. That's unbelievable.
That's great.
That was just emblematic. But a couple things you said I want to address. One, the fumble on Travis Kelce was a great play by Bradley Roby. And I'm consistent. You can go back to the Jets game when the same thing happened to DeAndre Swift, and I said that's a great play by the defender. Like, some fumbles are luck. That Roby punched it out, and that's a great heads up play. You get another interception from Patrick Mahomes. Kevin Byard, but it wasn't just turnover luck. The Chiefs had a success rate of 36% in this game. For a point of comparison, in the Super Bowl, it was 62%. Wow. But even if you put all 4 of those drops down as successful plays, say they catch them and it's a successful play, it still only brings it up to 41%. Like, the defense was really good. They allowed only 22.8 yards per possession in the second half. They forced a turnover. They shut the Chiefs out. Now, if the ball gets caught at the end, do the Chiefs win? Probably. The Eagles would have had all 3 timeouts. You're not feeling great about the offense, but there would have been a chance. You can't just say that it's turnover. Like, I thought that the Eagles played Jason Kelce great. They had a great plan for him. 9 targets, 7 receptions. Sorry, yeah, Travis Kelce. I mean, Jason Kelce played great too. Travis Kelce had 7 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown. They played a lot of zone coverage where they got somebody, usually Kevin Byard, connected to him early in the route. They had a lot of brackets, a lot of Byard getting physical off the line. Byard was around him all night long, and I thought they did a really good job there. Here's a crazy stat for you. We all know the Eagles didn't convert a third down until like the third quarter, right? Jalen Hurts didn't attempt a third down pass until there were 7.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Wow.
He connected with Devonta Smith on that drive to take the lead. The Eagles called a pass on 4 previous third downs, and Hurts took 3 sacks, and he had a 5-yard scramble on a 3rd and 10. And so they were out of sorts. They were constant. Their average yardage to go on third down was like 8.5 or 8.9 or something like that yards. I put the actual stat on Twitter earlier. They weren't winning first and second down. That makes it hard to win third down. But the thing is, like, I'm not concerned about the offense. The offense has been consistently good. They're 7th in DVOA, 4th in dropback EPA, 3rd in rushing EPA, and 5th in points per game coming into this week. What I am worried about, because this is a pattern, is their inability to salt games away. Playing with a lead to end the game. Up 4 with 5.5 minutes left on the 44-yard line. Not only could they not run the clock out, they couldn't pick up 10 yards to get a field goal to make it a 7-point game. Against Dallas, up 5 with 1:17, they go 3 and out. Against the Jets, up 2 with 4.5 minutes left, they throw the interception and lose the game. This is a pattern. And last year, the Eagles were money. You give the Eagles the ball back with 9 minutes and a 1-score lead, the game was over. They have not been able to do that, and it's been the defense stepping up. And you hope the defense continues to play at the level they did last night. But let's be honest, the Chiefs should have scored on that drive. It was a drop pass away. And so you don't want to make a living on that. So the Eagles offense needs to get better in those end-of-game situations.
Yeah, for sure. I think that they get too conservative in those situations. And I will say, I don't want it to be lost that Dallas Goedert wasn't playing in this game either. I think that really affected them in the first half. I think they made some adjustments in the second half. The offense obviously looked better in the second half, 2 touchdown drives there. Just want to make sure if anyone's listening that does gamble, if you're not betting Jalen Hurts anytime touchdowns, you're not living. It's just not a great weekend for your boy right here on the radio show. And not that I actually, Sean Bernard filled in for me on my radio show. I was in New York City, but I did send in my picks on a little clip. And thankfully, Jalen Hurts was my prop of the year on the anytime touchdown. So we finished on a positive week after Sunday was like, oh man, this is pretty brutal. But Jalen Hurts is my North Star when it comes to gambling. So anyone who's out there, check the lines on Wednesday and Thursday. The best way I do it is on Action Network. You go to the props section. You go and check if anytime touchdowns have been uploaded yet, and it gives you where they're at on every book. Last week, for example, on Wednesday, this is for people in legal gambling states, which I think is like half the country. But for the people out there who have Action Network, you can go take a look. And on some sites, it was plus 100, plus 110, plus 120. FanDuel had it at plus 150. Jalen Hurts has 32 rushing touchdowns in his last 36 games or something like that. He has 9 touchdowns this season. Nobody has more touchdowns since his first start. He has been, he's going to crush every rushing touchdown record that there is for quarterbacks, and he's going to challenge some non-quarterback rushing touchdown records, especially franchise ones. But just wanted to throw that out there. Might even be worth starting to dabble and take them, to score 2 touchdowns, because he's done that quite a bit at this point. So I think I saw people tweeting it out, tickets at me. They had plus 700, plus 800. So shout out to the people out there who were tweeting that at me.
All right. Anything else you got on this game, or should we move on to Sunday?
Yeah, we can move on. We can move on.
Okay, perfect. Let's go to the early window on Sunday, where we have the Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. Dallas wins this game 33-10. Carolina hung around in the first half of this game. They actually made it a 1-possession game in the late third quarter when Bryce Young found Tommy Tremble for a 4-yard touchdown. Made it a 17-10 game. Got me a little excited. Dallas responded with a 75-yard touchdown drive, and then they scored 9 more points off Carolina turnovers. Carolina was flagged 8 times for 90 yards in this game, including 2 personal fouls after stops on 3rd and long before halftime. You're not going to win a game as that big of an underdog shooting yourself in the foot like that. Bryce Young had a pick 6. He also fumbled in the 4th quarter. And the Cowboys just sort of put this one away. Deron Bland, who, by the way, was a 5th-round pick last year, he intercepted 4 passes last season after Thanksgiving. He picked up where he left off at the end of last season. He has 6 interceptions on the season. He's returned 4 of them for touchdowns. He is currently tied for the most pick 6 in a single season in NFL history, so he needs 1 more to break that record. Micah Parsons continues to play in dominating fashion. He had 10 pressures in this game. 8 of them came in under 2.5 seconds, which is the most in a game by anybody this season. So the Cowboys defense, albeit against a bad opponent, but they bounce back, and the Cowboys have a dominating win over the Panthers. What did you see in this one?
I have a question to ask you before I get into what I saw. Are we in a safe space? Like, is this going out online? Can people hear what I'm saying?
They can't. But it's not as easy to search your podcast as it is your tweets. It's always better to say things on a podcast than put it on a tweet.
That's true. I'm going to whisper it. I'm looking around, making sure no one can hear me. Is Dak Prescott an MVP candidate? I just want to.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think he is.
Let's start with it's going to be a quarterback because it's always a quarterback. Because I hate awards anyways. I think they're dumb. The most valuable player is always a quarterback because quarterbacks are just valuable. If it's supposed to go to the person having the most outstanding season, I don't see how you can't not give it to AJ Brown or Tyreek Hill, maybe Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, those guys, but it's going to be a quarterback because it's always a quarterback. And at that point, you're looking at a quarterback who puts up good stats and gets like the 1 or the 2 seed. And that could be the Cowboys. I mean, I think realistically, you have Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Dak Prescott. Those are the 4 realistic guys that can win the MVP.
So right now, the odds, Jalen Hurts is plus 250. Lamar Jackson is plus 350. Patrick Mahomes plus 400. Tua is plus 500.
Tua doesn't have a chance.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't think he's got the stand, kind of the big statement games remaining to have those performances. Brock Purdy has jumped to 10-1 at plus 1,000. I think Christian McCaffrey and him will cancel each other out a little bit. Then you have Dak Prescott at 15-1, plus 1,500. And then you have another one that we'll get to with CJ Stroud at 18-1. I think Dak and Stroud are being, very much, undervalued in the market right now. And this is also predictive. This is not who should win right now at this moment. They are probably looking at Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and saying not just what their numbers are now, but these teams look like they can potentially have a bye. And these teams look like, they're going to be in good position to get that bye, whereas Dak would have some ground to make up. Purdy has a little bit of ground to make up. Stroud, obviously, probably going to be a wild card. Then you have McCaffrey at 22-1, and it drops off after that. Purdy's not a real candidate. We agree. Tua, I don't think is a real candidate. We agree. So it really comes down to Jalen, Lamar, Mahomes, Dak, and Stroud, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then you look at what guys do you have. Who do you have an easy path to give another award? It's not going to be Stroud. They'll just give him Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Mm-hmm. He really has the conversation. He has an argument.
Yeah, he does, but they won't give it to him because he's a rookie. They'll just give him Offensive Rookie of the Year. Tua, they'll give him Comeback Player of the Year. Maybe maybe Lamar Jackson could get Comeback Player of the Year. I don't know if he was injured seriously enough, but if you want good odds, Dak's probably your guy.
Yeah, and even one of the games that he lost this year to the Eagles, he was fantastic. So it's not like he was a reason that they lost. Well, I mean, he was not good in the San Fran game, and he was not good when they lost to Arizona. So that's it seems like every one of these guys in the race has the clunkers. the Jalen clunker, well, I guess, is the Jets, and then the other semi-clunkers they've won. So it's hard to penalize them too much for that. But yeah, I mean, just comparing the numbers of Dak and Stroud to Jalen and Lamar, and obviously you have to add in some of the rushing value that Jalen and Lamar bring as well. That doesn't show up when you're just comparing raw stats. It's hard to make an argument that they're not in the conversation, especially when you consider the fact that Dallas does not have a running game, really. Pollard has been very bad this year. So Dak has had to shoulder a lot of the load there. It's not like they have CeeDee Lamb, who's been fantastic, but outside of that, it's not like they have any other dominant weapons. Their O-line's been kind of injured in and out. I think Dak's having probably maybe his best year. Whether it's his best statistical year or not, I'm not quite sure. But in terms of just his year contributing to winning, it's probably this year.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point. And they have a brutal stretch coming up too. Like, people talk about the Eagles stretch. The Eagles actually have an easier schedule remaining than both the Cowboys and the 49ers. So,
well, the problem with that, I would argue, it's hard to do this, but I would argue that these next 4 games are probably, and you include the fact that we just played Kansas City and we just played Dallas. That 6-game stretch, I know at one point was harder than any other 6-game stretch that anybody had to play this season. But the reason that strength of schedule is being weighed down is because we finished the year with Giants, Cardinals, Giants. Yeah. So I think that yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at the Eagles have 49ers, Cowboys, Seahawks, and Bills left as tough opponents, but Dallas has Eagles, Bills, Seahawks, so same teams there, but then they have Miami and Detroit. So Miami and Detroit versus San Fran. You look at San Francisco's schedule, they have Baltimore left. They've got Seattle twice, which Seattle's really starting to fall off, it looks like, but we'll get to them. But those are divisional games. Anything can happen in divisional games. And then the Lions are the sneaky team to worry about for the 1 seed. I think the Lions represent the biggest threat for the 1 seed because they have the Cowboys, the Vikings twice, and that's really it. I mean, if you're buying into the Broncos right now, the Saints, the Bears, the Packers, like, the Lions have the easy path forward. And I think they are the threat. They're the real threat for the 1 seed in the NFC.
Do you want to jump to that game?
Sure, let's do it. Let's go to Chicago, Detroit. So they almost lost this one. And for reasons I just stated, as an Eagles fan, I was hoping they would. But they don't. They end up winning 31-26. They trailed by 12 with 4:15 left. Been a sloppy game. Goff threw 3 interceptions. The ground game was totally ineffective. And then they scored, and they got a quick 3 and out, which was just horrible mismanagement by the Bears. The Bears have the worst defensive success rate in the league this week. They were literally just benefiting from turnovers. Playing not to lose when your defense was that bad and Fields was playing so good, it is just atrocious. They went back-to-back runs and then threw a bomb on 3rd and 10, punted it away, and the Lions go score to win the game. So I thought that was atrocious decision-making by the Bears. The Bears need to clean house. Eberflus has to go. That's been known for a long time. He's a joke. This was the thing last year where we were like, maybe they're just tanking on purpose. It is not on purpose. He just has no clue what he's doing. The sneaky thing to monitor here, and this is where it could be concerning for Detroit, since week 7, Detroit's defense ranks 31st in success rate and 32nd in EPA. Now, they played Baltimore in that game where they just got lambasted. But their other games were against the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Bears, teams that are not lighting the world on fire right now. So this Detroit defense is something to worry about. And Jared Goff is always something to worry about a little bit. Now, I know this game was at home, and I know Goff has been good for a year and a half, but it's still there. And you also get into if they have to go on the road in Philadelphia or somewhere like that in the playoffs where it's going to be cold, that can also become problematic for Goff. Where the Lions are scary if they get the 1 seed and the NFC title runs through Ford Field. If they have to go on the road, I'm not as worried about this team. And so them getting the 1 seed, in my opinion, is vital. I think they're the most likely team to challenge the Eagles for that. but you can't set aside how concerning their defense has been over the last month of the season.
Before the game last night, I was very much assuming that the Eagles were going to lose to the Chiefs. I was telling people that the Lions were going to get the 1 seed. Now I think it's like 50-50 between the Eagles and the Lions. Their record, their schedule remaining is just not very hard. But man, it would have been huge if the Lions could have lost this game. And it looked like they were going to. I forget what the number they were up 12 with. I don't know if you said it, but
yeah, it was
12.
12. So the Bears were up 12 with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left.
That's just incredible. Eberflus is a moron. His press conferences are bordering on concerning, like for well-being. Like, what is this guy drunk? He does not come off well, and he makes horrible decisions in game. And this is just a totally lost era of football. If you're the Bears, like, I don't think you rebuilt anything. At least you have some picks coming over the next, you have 2 top picks this upcoming year. But yeah, Chicago's a joke. So let's not even focus on them. The Detroit side of things, I know that I feel like I've been on a bit of a roller coaster with the Detroit Lions. And we did not take them seriously as a podcast in the preseason. You picked the Bears, or you picked the Packers to win the division. I picked the Vikings to win the division. And we were both pretty confident in those picks, I think. And then when it comes to the Lions, I don't think either of us were buying the hype. And obviously they've lived up to the hype and some. They're sitting here at 8-2. But I've been on a roller coaster of giving them credit and not giving them credit. And at this point, for me, inject the Lions into my veins as an Eagles opponent over the 49ers and the Cowboys. That defense is a problem in a way that the Niners, Cowboys, and Eagles don't have on either unit. We can complain all we want about the Eagles defense and some of the concerns that we've seen. We've put up, I think they allowed 0 points to Miami in the second half. They allowed 6 points to Dallas in the second half, and they allowed 0 points to Kansas City in the second half. So those are 3 pretty good offenses, and the Eagles defense did that in 3 straight second halves there against 3 good teams. So Detroit's defense just had that 4-game stretch that you mentioned. That Chargers game was concerning. They looked like Swiss cheese in that Chargers game. And the fact that Chicago looked this good offensively for the first time this year really is also concerning. So I think this Detroit defense makes the Detroit Lions an absolute pretender. But none of that really matters if they get the 1 seed. If they get the 1 seed, they at least give themselves a chance. But if they have to play San Fran, Dallas, or Philly in the postseason, I don't care if it's in Detroit. They at least give themselves a better chance to win if it's in Detroit. But I think they will lose to any of those teams in the playoffs. I think that defense is just not ready for prime time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're the biggest threat to get the 1 seed. But if you're ranking like threats to beat, like to win the NFC, I still think they're number 4, which is great progress for the team. Hats off to them and what they've done. I just think they're still just missing a couple pieces.
Yeah, the concern for the Eagles really about giving up the 1 seed to Detroit would be less about not getting the bye and less about home field advantage and having to go to Detroit. The annoying part of it is you have to play San Fran in the second round, probably. That's really what you want to avoid. Like, we don't want to play San Fran in the second round. We'd rather play Dallas. We'd rather play Detroit. We'd rather play Minnesota or Seattle, New Orleans, if they get through. You don't want to put yourself in a spot where you're the 2 seed waiting to play the 3 seed or vice versa and having to go to San Fran. So you almost would rather San Fran get the 1 seed than Detroit in that scenario. But I think Detroit, like you said it perfectly. They're the biggest threat for the 1 seed, but not the biggest threat when it comes to playoff time.
Yeah. All right, let's roll on to our next game here. It is the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Cleveland Browns. And Mark, I'm going to throw my flag on you here.
Wow, this is a big game.
I'm going to put you on the clock for the 1 minute drill in this one. So the floor is yours.
T-minus 1 minute.
America, your national nightmare is over. Matt Canada has been fired. The Cleveland Browns win 13-10 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Kenny Pickett with another embarrassing performance. Jalen Warren, 129 yards. I believe that the rest of the offense had 120. in this loss. So Jalen Warren needs to be kind of the guy that they build around going forward. I do think that the offense will improve. And the fact that they were in this game with such a pathetic offensive performance, I don't know if it says more about Pittsburgh or if it says more about Cleveland, who they had DTR, who I guess wasn't terrible, 165 yards, 3.8 yards per average, but not a great offensive showing. This is I know why Shane threw the flag here. I was hoping for DTR anytime touchdown, but couldn't get it home. I think, by the way, both these teams are going to make the playoffs. That's the saddest part about all this. I think we're going to have to watch a lot more of these two teams.
3,
I'll end it
2.
All right, Mark.
0.
Mark ends it with 3 seconds to spare. So there you have it. Pittsburgh, Cleveland, our first ever 1-minute drill that wasn't a Thursday night game. So let's roll on to the next one here. Good job, Mark. Let's roll on to the Los Angeles Chargers at the Green Bay Packers. Game, there's a lot to... Whew, man. I would say the Packers rookies shown a little bit in this victory over the Chargers. Jaden Reed had 46 rushing yards and 46 receiving yards. Dontavion Wicks had 91 receiving yards. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave combined for 60 yards. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what has always been. The Chargers defense stinks and Brandon Staley's got to go. There's no two ways about it. There hasn't been for a year and a half. The Packers had 6 completions of 20-plus air yards in this game. They averaged under 3 per game coming in. The Chargers are tied for the highest explosive play rate over the last 2 years. Jordan Love had the 4th highest EPA of all quarterbacks this week, and he recorded his first ever 300-yard passing game against Brandon Staley's defense. And it's not just the defense. The Chargers offense keeps shooting themselves in the foot. Keenan Allen dropped 2 touchdowns. Quentin Johnson had a huge drop at the end that would have won the game. Austin Eckler had a fumble inside the 10. The Chargers ended 1 of 4 in the red zone. So the Chargers are going to Charger. Packers get the win. They are technically in contention in the NFC, but they stacked up a lot of injuries. They lost running back Aaron Jones in this game. They lost running back Emmanuel Wilson, leaving only A.J. Dillon left active. Neither are expected to be long-term injuries, but they do play on Thanksgiving against the Lions. So if they're unable to go there, I don't know what they're going to do for a rushing attack.
I want to read some stats to you, Shane. And I know that quarterback wins are not exactly Shane's favorite stat to talk about. And they're not NFL Twitter's favorite stat to talk about. And I understand why. Obviously, a quarterback can't control every part of the outcome of a game. But I would also say that across sports, in team sports, not individual, obviously, across team sports, I think a quarterback has more impact on whether a team wins or loses a game than any other athlete does on their sport. Pitchers don't go deep enough anymore. I think too many goals are scored in hockey now. Maybe you could argue like the star player on a basketball team. Maybe you could argue like LeBron. I think you could probably say quarterback's more important, though, because if the star player's down, someone else can step up. If a quarterback's down, your offense is bad. I just want to read you a couple quarterbacks' record in their career. Josh Allen is 58-29 under constant fire, constant criticism to Josh Allen. Josh Allen can't walk down the street without people saying that he's being reckless. Lamar Jackson.
I mean, was he using a crosswalk?
Yeah, he's not a jaywalker. He's a good citizen. Lamar Jackson, 53-19. 53-19 Lamar Jackson is. And we're having conversations. Is he worth the money? Should the Ravens trade him? We had the whole NFL come out and say, oh, we don't want him. Atlanta Falcons, immediately as it could have been possible, were like, we would never want to have an interesting team or a good quarterback. How dare you say that we would want Lamar Jackson? Jalen Hurts is 32-12 in his career. Justin Herbert is 29-30. Justin Herbert has lost more games than Josh Allen has, and Josh Allen's played in 29 more games. Justin Herbert has lost more games than Lamar Jackson has. Or actually, Lamar Jackson has lost 10 less games than Justin Herbert has. He's played in 13 more. Jalen Hurts has won 3 more games than Justin Herbert has. He's played in 16 less. At a certain point, it can't be the play caller, the head coach, the O-line, the defense, the receivers, the weapons. He has Keenan Allen. He's a top 5 receiver. I know he had a bad drop in this game. He's been excellent all season otherwise. He's had Austin Eckler, a top 5 running back throughout his time. I think the O-line has graded out really well this year. I know that the defense is bad. If he was as good as these other quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson has had constant issues on his roster, whether it be with his offensive line or whether it be more so with his weapons. Josh Allen, we've complained about their inability to have a second receiver or a running back or, a reliable defense at the end of games and big games for his entire career, yet he wins those games. All I'm saying is if Justin Herbert is as good as everyone wants to pretend he is, and as good as he looks when he looks his best on tape, because he had a touchdown in this game, one of the best throws I've ever seen in my life. And I want to throw that out there because he's very obviously a top 10 quarterback. The problem is when he gets talked about with Joe Burrow and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, it offends me because those people have accomplished something in their career. That's all I have.
I mean, I would just point to another quarterback who lost a game last night, putting the ball in receivers' hands and they wouldn't bring it in. And that's what
over a large sample size, though.
Sure,
that's one
sure.
game. Patrick Mahomes wins like every game he plays otherwise.
Yeah, but I mean, Justin Herbert played at an elite level in this game. I thought he played outside his mind in this game. I really did. I thought he played such a good game. Like, go. I mean, go find me 5 throws in this game that were bad from him. Like, I mean,
he was 21 for 36. Like, they scored 20 points on the Packers. It's not like I'm not saying he played bad. I'm definitely not saying he played bad. He had 260 yards, 7.5 yards per attempt, 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying he played bad. He got the ball twice with under 3 minutes to go and a chance to go score a touchdown or get a field goal against the Packers. And I know that there was a drop.
He put the ball on Quentin. He put the ball on a first-round receiver's hands running behind the defense.
On first down. He had 2 more downs after that. Like, it's still the Packers defense we're talking about. They're a bottom 10 defense. He got the ball twice. He couldn't make anything happen at the end. I know that there was a drop, but it's just 20 points on the Packers defense is not good enough. We're all going to yell and scream about the defense. And I'm sorry, Brandon Staley came off like a petulant child in the press conference. He should have been fired last year. I've said that more than anybody. And I'm not trying to say that it's not his fault and that Justin Herbert's in a perfect situation. But what I am saying is he's right when he says that loss isn't entirely on the defense. And it's not entirely on Herbert, obviously not either. There were drops and there were a lot of decisions that were made. But the defense held them twice under 4 minutes. Like, they got them the ball back twice, and he couldn't get down the field to get a field goal. One of those times, I think he got it on like the 40, and he couldn't get the ball 20 yards. And I know that there was a drop, but it's just, I'm not asking him to be 13-4 and win a Super Bowl. I'm asking for him to not be 4-6. I'm asking for him to not blow a 28-0 lead in the playoffs. And again, I'm not saying he's the only person who blew that 28-0 lead, but you can also score in the second half. That is allowed. Like, I mean, nobody tell the Chiefs that because nobody tell the Chiefs that, but you are allowed to score in the second half. And I just want Justin Herbert to know that.
Yeah, you're allowed to score in the second half unless you are the Chiefs.
yeah. That the Dylan Wilkerson, who I know we clowned for his Dallas Eagles take, and he thanked us for the engagement. By the way, I went on his podcast and he was like, "I don't know what happened, but Shane tweeted at me, and the Eagles fans swarmed." But it was funny. But yeah, he put out an EPA chart with like first half EPA and second half EPA, and the Chiefs stuff is staggering.
Yeah,
it's insane. It's staggering. I don't know how I got back to the Chiefs, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did, in his words, probably they dominated the Eagles, and
By the way, he absolutely wrote another article being like the Eagles are absolutely lucky and the Bills plus 3.5 are like a 5-star play for him. But by the way, he bet on the Eagles this week against the Chiefs. Like that was the one funny thing about going on that podcast. I'm giving him what he wants talking about him on this podcast.
That's funny.
He's a good guy. He's just a little too analytical sometimes. Lives his life a little bit too much in the spreadsheets.
Yeah. All right, let's keep it rolling here. Let's go to Houston, where the Houston Texans beat the suddenly feisty Arizona Cardinals. The Texans left too many points on the board, and I really thought they were fortunate to win this one. You could also spin that and say the Cardinals got too many stops, and they were fortunate to lose this one because that's ultimately the goal now, to get that pick as good as possible. But the Texans had 60-plus yards on each of their first 5 drives, but they only scored on 2 of them. They had an interception and 2 turnover on downs, which you love to see the aggression, but it didn't pay off here. CJ Stroud threw 3 interceptions in this game after only throwing 2 in the previous 9 games. That's not to say he played bad, though. He still had a 250-yard half in this game. That's happened 11 times this year, and CJ Stroud is the only QB to do it more than once, doing it 3 times. He was asked after the game, I don't know if you heard this, about if your mentality changes after throwing 3 interceptions. Did you hear this quote?
I loved it.
Yeah, he said, Steph Curry, don't ever stop shooting. I'm going to keep letting it ride. Like, I just love that mentality from a quarterback.
I got no shame in my game, he said.
Yeah, that's incredible. Meanwhile, on Arizona's side, they failed on 3 fourth-down attempts in the fourth quarter. They end up coming up short here. Mark, this is what's crazy. The Houston Texans would be in the playoffs if the season ended today. And I legitimately think they're going to make the playoffs out of the AFC. I know I said that a week ago. I think they're going to get there. We're going to look at the Texans in a playoff game this season.
How about this? The Texans are a lock to make the playoffs. You can lock it in. It's a tough cover guarantee. I think they're like minus 290 or something crazy to make the playoffs. Like, they're a massive favorite. You look at their schedule, then go take a look at Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Indy, whoever you want to say is in the mix. They have by far the easiest schedule of those teams in the mix. Houston, I think they might lose this week upcoming to Jacksonville. They might win out after that. They literally might go 12-5. This might be an 11-12 win team. I'm extremely confident that they'll be in the playoffs. I actually weirdly walked out of this game thinking like both teams were better than I thought going in. I don't know why. There had all these turnovers, but it just felt like watching the game, I walked away impressed with Arizona's defense, that they were able to kind of hold them on those aggressive plays. And, you know, you said they were aggressive and we liked that, but the execution wasn't there. A lot of those were because of really good plays by like guys in Arizona's secondary or guys getting pressure and guys that don't really have much of a name, guys like we don't know that well on Arizona's defense. But I do think Gannon had them playing well in this game. And Houston, you know, you walk out. I thought this was a potential trap game for Houston a little bit. Jacksonville next week, they won a couple in a row. That was a big win. I think that changes their playoff odds probably from being like 50-50 to being like 80-90%. And I know that sounds like a big jump, but at this point of the year, every win is just absolutely massive. And I don't know how you could really make an argument that CJ Stroud isn't the most, if we're just going by the technical definition of the word, I think it'd be hard to make an argument that he's not the most valuable player to their team. You look at what Houston was before he's gotten there. He's changed the culture. The offense is obviously on a different planet. These are basically the same weapons besides Tank Dell that were here before, the same O-line that was there before. You know, it's Will Anderson and him that are basically new. It's not like they went out and spent a lot of money in free agency. What the Texans are doing this year, and D'Amico Ryans, obviously, Bobby Slowick, what the coaching staff's doing. I mean, it's one of the more impressive seasons I've ever seen. And I was standing on the table all season saying, take their win total over 5.5, which they cashed in this game. Take their win total over 5.5. And I think they win 7-8 games. Like, I think they'll be a little bit better than we think. They're going to win more than that. They're going to be in the playoffs. I'm confident in saying that.
All right, let's move on to the team that they're about to play. Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars win 34-14. Trevor Lawrence bounced back from that debacle in San Francisco. Actually, I don't know if it was in San Francisco, but against San Francisco in a big way. throwing for 262 yards. He threw for 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 2 touchdowns. They pushed the ball downfield. He had an ADOT of 9.5 yards, which is the highest for the season. He had an average depth of target of 17 yards on play action passes. Calvin Ridley, one of the complaints has been they've basically used him outside on either go routes or hitches all season, and they used him less statically. They hit a go from a condensed split. He scored a touchdown on a corner route from a stack. He scored a touchdown out of the slot. So they started to move Calvin Ridley around more. I thought the Jags offense was pushing a lot of the right buttons this week. Then on the Titans side, Will Levis was blitzed on 50% of his dropbacks for the second straight week. Teams are stacking the box and they are blitzing, knowing there won't be time for the downfield shots he wants to throw. Derrick Henry only had 38 yards rushing in this game, and I still thought Levis was fine. Like, with no running game, being blitzed heavily, he was 13 of 17 for 158 yards and 2 touchdowns with 2 sacks. And so I am not saying Will Levis is the answer for the Titans. I'm saying Will Levis looks a lot better than I expected, and he is not in a particularly good situation. So there's reasons to be hopeful there for Titans fans. But when a big man scores a touchdown, we got to shout it out. So shout out to Jeffrey Simmons for catching a touchdown pass through contact even late in this game for the Titans. I always love to see a defensive player playing fullback catching touchdown passes.
The Titans pulled out a bunch of trick plays in this game. Like, once they were down huge, they had another flea flicker type play that actually was really, really cool, like a cool design. And, I don't know why they were wasting them in this situation. But my biggest takeaway from this game is Calvin Ridley. And a stat, I wanted to look this up because I felt like this is exactly what I thought it would be. It's one of those things where you have an idea. It's like, oh, let me go check something out. And instead of it being like, oh, I was totally wrong. My eye test was totally wrong. It was one of those things where it checked out exactly what I thought. In losses, Calvin Ridley has, in those 3 losses, has 7 catches for 92 yards, a little over 2 catches per game, 30 yards per game, no touchdowns in those 3 losses. In wins, Calvin Ridley has 35 catches for 482 yards and 4 touchdowns in those 7 games. So he has 5 catches for 69 yards and, almost a little over a half a touchdown per game in those wins. And he has a, yards per target, 9.5 yards in wins, 5 yards in losses, catch to target ratio of 68% in wins as opposed to 39% in losses. I almost want to say, as Calvin Ridley goes, it feels like this offense goes. If they have a legitimate number 1 option and Calvin Ridley's there and engaged, it feels like they're a really scary offense. If not, it feels like they're not. So that was something that, I wanted to check the stats, and it bared out exactly what I kind of felt about the Jags season. And I will also say this might be one of the least talked about 7-3 teams and 7-3 campaigns in the history of the NFL. And all the conversation is, is Trevor overrated? Does Trevor stink? All these conversations. They're 7-3. They won the division last year, went to the second round. Like, it's just, I think different quarterbacks have different rules, and different quarterbacks get different excuses. And that's kind of always what I have a problem with the way that quarterbacks are talked about. And I think Trevor Lawrence has crossed over into that he gets unfairly talked about a little bit now. And I think people need to kind of look at what the context of what he's asked to do and look at the successfulness of it. And over the last 2 years, his record speaks for itself, in my opinion. So Trevor Lawrence looked a lot better in this game, but I think the reason is Calvin Ridley.
Yeah. All right, let's keep the ball rolling here with the Las Vegas Raiders at the Miami Dolphins. Miami wins this game 20-13. They turned the ball over 3 times, including a fumble and an interception by Tua. They missed a field goal, and that was all in the first 3 quarters. Then they started the fourth quarter with back-to-back 3-and-outs. But in the end, Tyreek Hill prevailed. He had 10 receptions on 11 targets for 146 yards and a touchdown. Tyreek Hill is the first player to have 1,200 plus receiving yards in the first 10 games of a season. He has 1,222. Meanwhile, on the Raiders side, actually, one more note on Tua. Just how important being in rhythm is for Tua. On passes thrown under 2.5 seconds, he was 22 of 26 for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. Passes over 2.5 seconds, he was 6 of 13 for 105 yards and an interception. So disrupting that rhythm is key for a team playing the Dolphins. And when the Raiders were able to do it, it worked really well for them. The Raiders do look like a competent football team with 4th-round rookie quarterback Aiden O'Connell. And that's not to say he played well. He had 3 interceptions. That's more to say after you fire Josh McDaniels, the Raiders are feisty, which is more than you could say a month ago. So the Raiders are kind of interesting to watch again. The Dolphins defense is kind of interesting to watch with Jalen Ramsey back. He gets 2 interceptions here, including one to end the game in the end zone. So the Dolphins churn out another win. It's not a pretty one, but they get the win nonetheless.
Pick Central on Barstool, a show that I was on a couple years ago and I call into sometimes. They do something called the Not That Bad Team of the Year in the NFL. That's what the Raiders are. They're not that bad. They're pesky. They're feisty. Like, they hang in games. I think they kind of they symbolize that not that bad kind of thing that they talk about all the time. And that's truly what the Raiders are. Antonio Pierce has them hanging tough. Defense is playing a lot better. They're getting the ball to Devontae Adams. Like, they got a deep ball to him in this game that, was the offense good? Did it move the ball consistently? No. But if you make a big play like that happen, then it lessens how much you have to do. So I guess, like, there's a glass half full, glass half empty way to look at this Dolphins win, right? It's like glass half full. The defense is getting a lot better. And I guess if you look at Vic Fangio teams, their first half and their second half rankings are always massively different. Apparently, Fangio teams always improve throughout a year. I guess it's a complex defense. They ask you to do different types of things than even the Fangio disciples do. I think they simplify it a little bit more from what I was reading from people a lot smarter than me. And people were saying that Vic Fangio definitely has teams improved on the stretch. And not to mention, Jalen Ramsey's pretty freaking good, as we're seeing over these first couple of weeks. So getting Jalen Ramsey back, I mean, when he went down, it kind of changed our outlook on the Dolphins in the offseason, and they outperformed what we thought they'd do without him by a lot. But with Jalen Ramsey, it looked like they were going to be a Super Bowl type contender. Maybe that's the case, but the offense was a little weird in this game. And like you said, it's just, if you get Tua out of, off script, it becomes a lot different of an offense. And I'm a Tua guy. I'm a Tua defender. And me saying that isn't admitting like, oh, Tua stinks, or, oh, you can't win with Tua. But what it is saying is, there's a very specific way to attack the Dolphins. They have to come up with an adjustment to that. And whether that is just even more quick routes, and that might be the adjustment. You have Waddle and Hill. You have the ability to do that. If A-Chain gets back healthy, he came back and got hurt in this game, you have him to do that as well. But let's move on to the next game.
All right, let's go to the last game in the Sunday early slate. The New York Giants at the Washington Commanders.
Tommy DeVito! Hey, I'm walking here!
Yeah, the Giants win this game 31-19. They force 6 turnovers, 3 fumbles, and 3 interceptions to complete the season sweep of the Commanders, including a 54-yard pick six by Isaiah Simmons to seal the game. UDFA Tommy DeVito was 18 of 26 for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns with no interceptions and 9 sacks. It's really unfortunate news for the Giants because not only did that win probably knock them out of the number 1 pick sweepstakes, they went from 2nd to 5th right now. It also greatly increased the chance that they will pay Tommy DeVito $40 million next year based on this one game. So really bad outcome for the Giants, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I bet the Commies -8.5 in this game, which is an embarrassing thing to admit when they lost by 12. I was only off by about 20.5 points there. But I would just like to say, like, third quarter came around, and as soon as I started realizing, like, they're not coming back, like, they're not going to come back and win this game, let alone cover, you just started rooting for the Giants because I do not want Caleb Williams on the Giants. Me and Shane were talking about it off air. With Kyler coming back and even how they lost that game, it looks like they will win another game or two. I actually think they're going to win this week against the Rams. That's my bet of the week. There you go, folks. But Arizona's going to win too much. This win for the Giants is huge. They might win another one down the stretch. It now is looking like Caleb Williams is going to be a Chicago Bear or a New England Patriot. So that's where we're at. So I'm happy, very, very happy that the Giants lost this game.
All right, we've got a Broncos fan in the chat asking about Broncos Vikings. So let's skip to Sunday Night Football and we'll come back to the afternoon games while he's here. So Broncos Country NFL on YouTube. Here you go. Here's your shout out. We'll talk about the Denver Broncos victory over the Minnesota Vikings. Let's ride 21-20. The Vikings led the majority of this game, but Denver was able to come out on top. They scored their first touchdown of the game on the final drive of the game to take that lead. And Denver is on a 4-game winning streak for the first time since 2016. Josh Dobbs cooled off in this game. He tossed 1 interception. He fumbled 3 times, although they only lost 1 of those. He did keep the Vikings in it, though. I mean, he's 20-32, 221 yards and a touchdown. He made some good plays with his feet. But Denver was able to pressure him on 58% of his dropbacks. Had 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. They had 10 QB hits. The Denver defense played really well in this one. And then Russell Wilson snapped a 5-game streak of under 200 passing yards, which was the longest of his career. And suddenly he's gone 4 games without an interception, his longest streak since joining the Broncos. So not only are the Broncos on a 4-game winning streak, Russ hasn't turned the ball over in 4 games. The defense is coming off a good performance. And by the way, the Broncos are only 1 game out of the AFC wildcard right now. So this is looking more like we thought it would. Mm-hmm. Not that the Broncos are world beaters, not that Russell Wilson's fixed. I think he's still a problem and you need to move on. But this is more like what we expected when Sean Payton took over in Denver.
Yeah, this is kind of exactly what we expected. Like 5-5, they'd be right in the mix, an 8-9 win team. It's funny. I had Vikings +3 as my bet of the week. And so it feels like in my head, the Vikings won this game because they covered. And shout out to them for stopping them on that 2-point conversion. That was huge for me. But the Josh Dobbs thing, I want to push back a little bit on. I thought he played awesome in this game. And I know the O-line's a problem, that he took a lot of pressure. Like, he got away from so much of it. Like, I think if Kirk Cousins was playing in this game, and this isn't saying that he's better than Kirk Cousins, but with that offensive line, if Kirk Cousins was playing in this game, they wouldn't have been close. Like, the touchdown that he had to make it happen, and he dropped it off as he was going out of bounds, like ran in for the touchdown, cashed the anytime touchdown. By the way, Josh Dobbs' anytime touchdown might be something people have to start thinking about. He's been running like a madman, especially in the red zone. I think Josh Dobbs is playing like a top 15 quarterback right now. And this game didn't stop that belief. He was the better quarterback in this game, in my opinion, even though he got sacked a lot. The fumbles, there's something going on with the center here. Like, the center and the quarterback could not get figured out. I felt like two of those, I think, were on exchanges from the center to Dobbs. So that was something weird in this game. But Denver, I mean, hats off. A defense that gave up 70 points has really turned it around. I'm sure if you filtered that out, or just since that game, I'm sure it's like, I'm sure his record is, or the defensive stats there, the defensive, numbers are probably top 10 in the NFL.
Yeah. I don't think, I guess I wouldn't say Dobbs played bad. And that's one of the things we've talked about too. The mobility is so huge. Like, bad offensive line, mobility can help solve that. And you're seeing that Josh Dobbs has done really well at extending plays, both scrambling and just getting out of the pocket and pushing the ball downfield. So the Vikings are definitely an interesting team to watch down the stretch to maybe make a push for an NFC wildcard.
Yeah, no, I will not make a push. They're a lock. Okay. I think the NFC playoffs are locked in. Besides the NFC South, you can make an argument: Saints, Falcons, Bucks, whoever, whatever. I think we're locked in to Eagles, Niners, Lions, NFC South winner, Cowboys, Vikings, Seahawks. I think that's going to be the 7. I don't buy in at all to any other team getting in the mix there.
Yeah. All right. So there we go. Comment here from Broncos Country. It says, I agree. Mobility is one of the best attributes to have. It is so key in so many different situations. So
Russ has even been using it more as of late too, not to run, but to really scramble in the pocket. And it's led to him having the best stretch he's had as a Bronco. So I mean, it's absolutely.
Yeah. Mobility doesn't mean rushing yards. It just means escapability. Yeah,
Dak
is
too.
a great
We always
example.
talk about it with Dak. Yeah.
So, okay, let's get into the Sunday afternoon slate. We've got 3 games left here. We'll start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the San Francisco 49ers. The Buccaneers lose 27-14. Brock Purdy has come off of the bye week playing nearly flawless football. He had a 149 passer rating last week. He had the perfect 158.3 this week. Was 21 of 25 for 333 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was the first perfect passer rating for a 49ers quarterback since Joe Montana did it in 1989. Tampa Bay was inside the 49ers 15-yard line twice in the fourth quarter while trailing by 13. They failed to score both times. Tampa, in a problem that goes back to last year, they still can't run the ball, which makes them entirely reliant on Baker Mayfield. And while being entirely reliant on Tom Brady was okay, being entirely reliant on Baker Mayfield is not a place you want to be in 2023. And I mean, the San Francisco defense is playing really well, too. The addition of Chase Young has paid off. Unfortunately for them, Talanoa Hufanga had a knee injury that Kyle Shanahan said was, quote, most likely a torn ACL. I can probably look up if that's finalized for now, but I'm sure it is. When a coach says that, that is what happens. So you're probably looking at the rest of the season without, and it was confirmed it's a torn ACL. So Hufanga will miss the rest of the season in the backfield for the 49ers secondary.
Yeah, that's massive. That's definitely their weakest part of their entire roster is their secondary. Like D-line, linebacker, O-line weapons are definitely stronger. So I don't have much to say about this game. Brock Purdy, if he wasn't Brock Purdy, would be an MVP candidate, I think. But it's hard to make that case when Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Trent Williams are all, there. It's just they have an unbelievable roster, and these were one of those games where it just strengthens the belief that San Francisco is by far the biggest threat to the Philadelphia Eagles. It's not even close.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the next game on the slate here, which is the New York Jets at the Buffalo Bills.
Throw in the challenge flag. 1 minute drill.
All right, Mark's putting me on the clock for the 1 minute drill.
1 minute.
So let's go. All right, so the Bills win this game 32-6. They started slow, had a negative yardage field goal drive after their defense forced a turnover, had 2 more field goals and a punt on their first 4 drives. But then the offense got back-to-back touchdown drives before halftime where Josh Allen was 5 of 5 for 145 yards with 2 touchdowns. Meanwhile, on the Jets side, they shattered a record here. They broke a streak, 41 straight drives without a touchdown, and they finally got one. And then Zach Wilson got benched anyways in the late third quarter for Tim Boyle after going 7 for 15 for 81 yards with 1 touchdown and an interception. He also took 5 sacks, had a QBR of 3.8. It is indefensible that the New York Jets didn't go get Josh Dobbs, go get Jacoby Brissett, heck, even get Carson Wentz after the Rodgers injury. They knew that they were wasting a defense. That's why they made a move. Rodgers got hurt week 1. They should have got a quarterback.
No doubt about it.
All right, there we go. Man, there's a little bit of an adrenaline rush racing that clock as it starts counting down. I'm not going to lie. I was like, I'm going to get done too early. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I still have more things I want to say.
Yeah, I had that with the 30 seconds, but the 1 minute, when you hit it with me, I was like, oh, can I be done in 30?
Yeah. All right, so let's get into our last game. It is the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams win this game 17-16. Matthew Stafford looked healthy in this game after missing a game with a thumb injury, but the Rams offense struggled in the first half and really throughout the entire game, I thought. After throwing an interception down 9 in the fourth quarter, Matthew Stafford led back-to-back scoring drives and got the win. Then on the Seahawks side, Geno Smith got off to a hot start and then the offense ground to a halt. And then in the third quarter, up 16-7, Smith injured his arm, and Drew Lock entered the game. And he went 2 of 6 with 1 interception, failed to pick up a first down on any drive. And they put Geno back in the game with 1:31 left and no timeouts, and they got the Seahawks into field goal range. But they missed a 55-yard field goal that would have won the game. And did you see the thing about the speaker in the helmet? Did you hear about that?
I did. I
did. So apparently they had a pass, no timeouts, and they ran up to the line of scrimmage and did a run play that gained like 1 yard and then spiked it to kick the field goal. And Wilson said after the game that he couldn't hear on the speaker. And I think people said that like that meant the speaker went out. It wasn't working, but then somebody acted like, no, there was a bunch of people talking into the headset and he couldn't hear what to do. I don't really know what happened there, but either way, I don't know why wouldn't you just spike the ball? Like if there's any confusion, why wouldn't you just clock it and then get a play call in? I don't really know why you play that out that way, but that was a big loss for Seattle.
Yeah, it's a big loss. I don't think it'll impact them in terms of the wild card race, but it ends any dream or hopes they had at competing for the division. The Rams just own them. That's the NFC West coaching cycle. Like, you know, McVay owns Carroll. Carroll owns Shanahan. Shanahan owns McVay. They all own the Cardinals. That's kind of like what it is.
Yeah. This was Stafford's 35th career fourth quarter comeback. So it gives him the 6th most in the NFL history. You want to guess who he trails, or do you want me to tell you?
Tell me.
All right. So he trails Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Matt Ryan, and then Drew Brees for fourth quarter comeback wins.
Not bad company.
Not bad company. So, all right. Well, that wraps it up. That gets us through our Week 11 recap show. We're going to throw it to our final thoughts here. And for my final thought, I'm going to resume canceling teams. I took a few weeks off from canceling teams to do some other things in my final thoughts. But previously, I have canceled the Chargers, the Bears, the Falcons, the Giants, and the Patriots, all 5 of which won the game following when I canceled them, I might add. Today, I'm canceling the Washington Commanders. You don't get to lose. You don't get to get swept by a team I already canceled in the Giants and remain uncanceled. So the Washington Commanders, they are no longer relevant until such a time as which they fire Ron Rivera and take getting an NFL quarterback seriously. So I don't think Sam Howell's it. He's less of a problem than Rivera, but this is a team that needs major help and they need to clean house and start over. I fully expect them to do that this offseason, but Washington, you're canceled. I'm done with you this season. That's my final thought.
I totally agree with it. That team stinks. My final thought is, as always, is my just leans for next week. And it's Steelers money line at the Bengals, Saints money line at the Falcons, Colts -2.5 against the Buccaneers, Cardinals money line against the Rams, Eagles -3.5 against the Bills, and the Vikings -3.5 against the Bears. Those are my early leans. And the touchdown scorers, obviously. Allen, Dobbs, Hurts. You know the drill.
All right. Well, that is going to do it. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 131 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Drop us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, just even the little thumbs up helps the algorithm a lot to get this out there to more people. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm on Twitter and YouTube at ShaneHalfNFL. Mark is on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. And we will catch you guys next time.